everyone. This is Greg McKeown, the author of this, of Essentialism, the disciplined pursuit of less, or I would say less but better. And Greg, thank you so much for being here with the Proactive Magazine.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be with you.
Yeah, so this is the last farewell issue of the Proactive Magazine. We've been doing the magazine for the last 8 years. And we are going out with the bang with Greg here. Greg has been the author of the book Essentialism, and I read it only twice, so I'm not really, fast with learning apparently, but I needed the reminder. And now I'm reading it the third time at the beginning of the year, just to make sure that I get everything and I plan the year right. So is it okay that I read it three times already, Greg?
It's not just okay, it's an evidence that you get the idea because it's a disciplined pursuit. And those words are really important. It's not something that you can just read once and then now you've got it.
Right.
And it really is my honor that I hear now frequently that people are rereading it and a third time and a fourth time. I mean, literally somebody said recently that they had read it like 17 times. And I'm not sure I'm advocating that, but I just think the idea of rereading Essentialism means that you're in the right, you've got the idea. You're going to become this type of person over time. And it's not the idea that gets you there. It's the repetition. It's the continuity that will be powerful over time. Because that's what Essentialism is. It's the continual, repeated, obsessive pursuit of just those things that matter most.
Yeah, I mean, in your book, you give this very good example of the essentialist, of somebody who was on the verge of retiring from a company, but then decided to change his role. Can you just give us a little bit about this example, how this actually works? Because it gives a great example of essentialism.
This individual had been very focused at one time and navigated all of the different requests that he was having, excuse me, to eliminate the non-essentials so that he could really execute on a project that he thought could really make a massive difference personally and also in the organization he was in. And he was successful in this. But because he became successful, there was an increase of options and opportunities. And the form that took is that the company he was a part of got purchased by a larger and, as it turns out, more bureaucratic firm. So he goes into the new environment and he tries to say yes to everyone and everything without really thinking about it because he wants to be a good team player in the new environment. And in the process of applying this new approach, his success seems to get in the way of his success because the quality of his work is going down and the stress he's experiencing goes up. So what can he do? In the end, he decides not to retire. That was an escape valve. That was like a way to make it all the madness stop. But he stays and he starts to be more selective, more thoughtful about how he utilizes his time and energy. And as he's more selective, he finds that he's able to create more space on his calendar in order to figure out what is most essential, in order to figure out the right project. And he starts working on just the right few things. And so by the end of that year, his performance evaluation has gone up. He ends that year with one of the largest bonuses of his whole career. And also in his own life, he said, I got my life back because he applied essentialism not just to his professional pursuits, but as an idea, a philosophy approach for the totality of his life. And so he said, I was able to go to the gym every night again, and I was able to eat dinner with my wife uninterrupted. And so he found that by doing a few things better, he was able to produce breakthrough results personally and professionally. And that's really the value proposition of essentialism.
Yeah, for me, when I read the book, what you just said was really it caught my attention that what got you here, the success that got you here, is actually causing more problems for you because you see all these additional opportunities. And also, I think it's also this thing that, well, in my experience I had, is that you start believing that you can do more because you got there. So you can, I'm the Superman now because I've achieved all this. So I can do even more. I can be even better. But in the sense that I can do more stuff because I've already had so much success. So I can even, like make it bigger, right? But then the results are not there.
Yes, and it's a hubris born of success. That's Jim Collins that put it that way. A hubris born of success. We can just start to think, well, I can. I am able. And it can become a curse of capability. Because, and we become victims of our success. Yes, success can become a catalyst for failure.
Exactly, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Unless we learn the antidote to the problem. So if the problem is the undisciplined pursuit of more, then the antidote is the disciplined pursuit of less but better. And that's really what the thrust of the whole book is about.
Yeah, and that's how we can later escape this moment that, things go up, to go down again, to go up, to go down again, right? Because this is what happens, and we say, yeah, it has to be like this. Well, it doesn't, right?
Yes, it doesn't. What we can do instead is take on this mindset, this essentialist mindset, and then develop, in addition to the mindset, the skill set of how to lead differently. Now, there's still a price for learning how to do those things and then applying them. There's a cost associated with it. And the cost is one must make trade-offs.
Yes, exactly.
One must look at all the different things and decide which things to do and which things not to do. And the word decide, the Latin root of the word decide, means to cut or to kill. And so this is what we mean when we make a decision. It's what won't we do? What will we eliminate? What won't we do in order to let the most meaningful contribution we can make come forward? What previous aspiration that no longer serves us are we willing to let go? So I had a powerful experience with this. I think you can relate to this. This is not in the book. It was post the book. But I remember when I was 10 years old, thereabouts, I remember one of my brothers saying after we'd watched one of the Star Wars movies, wouldn't it be great to have a stormtrooper outfit? Like if you could just wear that whole outfit, that would be so cool if you could walk down the street looking like a stormtrooper. In my young mind, I was like, yes, that might be the coolest thing in the world. And then that stayed with me, because sometimes these ideas do stay with us, these wants, these desires, even if they're, in this case, a little silly. And so I remember even as an adult, every Halloween, this idea would come forward, to the point that I looked it up eventually. How much does it cost to buy a really great replica of the stormtrooper outfit? And the answer is $1,000. And I remember, year after, no, come on, that can't be worth it. And then this year, I went to the store that had one. I just went on my own. I wanted to maybe surprise my children, and I got the stormtrooper outfit. And I sat. I asked if I could try it on first, and so I tried the whole thing on, and I put it on, and I stood in front of the mirror, and I looked at myself, and two things happened in that moment. The first was that I liked what I saw. Stormtrooper in the mirror, fantastic. And then the second experience came with it, which is I have no need whatsoever to do this. This is just years ago. This was important years ago. This is not important to me now. And so I left it at the store and was finally cured of this, desire or this intent or whatever it is. And so I think this is actually quite a strong metaphor for many things in our lives. What are the stormtrooper outfits of our lives? that at one time we cared about, at one time we got committed to, and then we never let go of it. And I think that a lot of people are adding these every day. Ideas, oh, maybe I should do that. I should do this. I should do that. I should be a stormtrooper. I should be this kind of stormtrooper. And we just add these, and then we try to pursue all of them. And to put it this way, one of my professors at Stanford said, goals are the theory that work. And what he meant really was not only that goals are good and positive, but that they work almost too well. But once we set goals, once we have intents in our heart and mind, they just propel us and keep us going. And so I've learned to be very careful about goals. I've learned that through even this Stormtrooper outfit experience as a reminder, what are the goals that no longer serve us? What are the things that we think we want, that at one time we wanted, that we don't want anymore? And to be aware of those when they come along, so that we can evaluate them freshly, newly, looking in the mirror, so to speak, at the outfit as to whether it matters anymore.
Yeah, this is a perfect metaphor right now for our magazine. I mean, right. Something that served us for the last 8 years was really great, and I love that experience of doing the magazine, doing interviews with other authors, also Seth Godin, Michael Hyatt. I met all these fantastic people thanks to the magazine. I learned so much. But to recognize, for example, that for this year, it should be over because we have other, there are trade-offs, as you said, so we have to decide what we should focus on. And by finishing the magazine, by closing it off, we're not killing it. We're not saying it was wrong or it was bad. It's a change because, as you said, something that was really important then and served us then doesn't serve us anymore, and it's fine. That's why we want to go out with a blast and then continue on to other things. And so we still appreciate what happened, and we appreciate that, but we are essentially choosing something else, right?
Nature is our teacher in so many ways, and in this way as well. I just this summer went to Yosemite National Park. And as a bit of a crime against nature, it was the first time I'd been, even though I've lived in California for years now. And you're supposed to go. Apparently, you haven't seen California unless you've been to Yosemite National Park. And that turned out to be quite true. It's absolutely beautiful. And as we were taking a tour, one of the people there said that they got to a point where, for a while, where they tried endlessly to make sure there were no fires in the park, that was seen as an absolute negative, that was just seen as destruction. If you burn something down, if a trees got burned down, then this had to be avoided at all costs. So that was true with man-made fires, but even other fires, the goal was to put them all out. And over time, they found that was very damaging to the ecosystem of the park. And in fact, they had to start man-making fires to make sure in controlled ways that they would eliminate some of the buildup that had happened in the forest. And so it's a great example, again, of there is a natural way of things, that elimination, that the discombobulation of things, especially if we're strategic and deliberate about it, can be greatly advantageous to us. In order to get to the next level, we can think about the phoenix, who is the mythical creature who is reborn amid its own ashes. That's what we're going for. And you must go through these journeys of, okay, this served us, it no longer serves us. Let's break through to the next level by allowing this former level to go, so that we can have the space to figure out or to think about what it is we want to do next.
Yeah, totally. And another thing that really I was practicing this past year, and actually I was reporting to you on Twitter every time I did it, was the personally quarterly offsite. And it's another like, speaking of going out and everything. So like I'm from time management space. I'm all about productivity and about getting things done. And one of the important things of getting things done is the weekly review, which many people skip. because, of course, it's convenient to skip weekly review. We have time for other people. We don't have time for ourselves. So that's one problem. But what does weekly review give you? It gives you the feedback loop. What happened this week? What is the plan for next week? So you make the conscious decision. And you added something else, which gives the big picture. And I have to admit, I never practiced that much of the big picture. Like every year, yes. But what you said was about quarterly offsite. So like every 3 months. And can you talk about that? Because this is really, for me, it was really so important every 3 months to do it, to go out and review my 3 months.
Yes, the idea is a personal quarterly offsite. And it's really kind of almost self-explanatory from that description. We know what a quarterly offsite is in an executive retreat. You go away somewhere, away from your normal environment, and you look at the big picture. You review the past, you look at the future, and then you sort of come from both of those perspectives, figure out what's important now. And so you might look at the last 90 days, what's been going on, what are the trends, what has really worked well, what is not working. If I didn't change anything, what would happen next? And then after you've figured that out, you can evaluate sort of your present. How am I feeling now? Where are things going? And the important relationships in my life and the important goals that I've been setting. And then you look at the future. You say, okay, what are the 2 to 3 things that are really important to me for the next 90 days? And you're bound to have more than 2 or 3. And that's why the process is so important. Is you say, well, if I could only do one, what would it be? And if I could get that one done and I could get one more done, what would that be? And you just keep going until you say, okay, I've got 2 or 3 things, and it feels a realistic stretch to get those accomplished. And then finally, sort of the 4th stage is just what's important now. You say, okay, if I can look at the past, present, future, then that should inform something about what really matters this moment, what matters this next week that's ahead of me. And you keep coming back to that question again and again. You review your answers. You might even review it every day, just a quick glance at what the goals are and what you've come to and what you've decided about. And so this becomes a very important, how would we say, like deliberate, intentional strategy, which is a sort of top-down approach in your life. And then you also have the other side of this, which is the emergent strategy, which comes up from beneath. And that's the daily living and adaptation. And that's what that question, what's important now, is all about. So you do the big picture thinking and the personal quarterly offsite, and then the daily or even moment-to-moment thinking and adaptation that we need in this very different environment that we live in than maybe 50 years ago.
Yeah, I realized, for example, in the quarterly offsite, which is what was really very important for me, is that it gives me also this ability to review my year's goals to see if they are still relevant. Because I planned them in January. So maybe in the 3rd quarter of the year, they're no longer relevant. Or I should switch gears or do something else. And if you don't do it, you might not realize that you're, as you said in the beginning of this interview, just going into the wrong direction because you set the goal, wrong.
Yes, and I think that the environment that we're now in is kind of challenges us to think about, like there's the military of 50 years ago, or we might call it the Cold War military. And then there's the military of now that's been developed, right? The 4th area of the military, special forces. And that was designed for sort of unusual military scenarios, terrorism, for example. So that's a very different way of having to fight, of having to battle. It's a very different kind of enemy. And I think the prioritization of today requires both abilities. You need the long-term thinking. In fact, I would encourage people to have much, much longer-term thinking than they normally have. And by that, I don't mean 5 years or 10 years. I don't even mean to the end of your life visioning. I mean way past it. So I would encourage people to develop 100-year vision.
Wow.
Because that's beyond us. And that's why it's so important, is that we have a vision that's bigger than you and me. It's bigger than our life. And certain vision can only take place with that kind of length in mind. So I would encourage people to think far longer than they normally would. And incidentally, I would encourage people to think from 100 years past before them. So when we talk about past, present, and future, I think we should be thinking 100 years before us so that we can start to understand our own contribution within the context of an intergenerational family that we've all been a part of. They shape us. We don't need to know their names for them to have affected us.
All right.
You know, the decisions by one's grandparents and great-grandparents and great-great-grandparents have massively affected all of us. Almost certainly the country we live in is affected by the decisions that they made. The language we speak. So it's not just geography and language, it's also culture. It's also, you know, ways of thinking about the world, patterns of behavior, patterns of education, patterns of emotional processing and how we do or don't deal with things in our lives, what we've been allowed to talk about and not allowed to talk about. So I'm describing a very, very, I think, robust visioning process here, 100 years before and 100 years after. And from that kind of perspective, you then work towards these daily adjustments. And that's kind of like the old military system, right? Very long-term plans and strategy. And then in addition to that, we need this other, just as extreme, but in the opposite direction, where it's this moment-to-moment analysis of what's important now. And that is a vibrant and continual and disciplined pursuit. That we are saying, okay, what was important even 5 minutes ago may have changed. Not the big long-term visioning values that we've identified, but the adaptation. So I would describe this as two kinds of focus, both of them necessary, both of them essential. There is focus as a noun, which is the thing that you've finally come to. This is important. This is the very long-term set of things that really matter. And then there's this focus as a verb, which is the continual, perpetual adaptation, moment to moment. So that, you know, this morning, and it's already happened to me, right? This morning I've had insights that have come, my own insights inside of me, just you know, little promptings and guidance. I've also had, you know, an email from someone that was materially important for a project that I'm pursuing. And so being able to have enough space on my calendar to be able to call that person, as I did this morning, spontaneously to address the concern that they'd raised. You can't do that if you're packed full. You can't adapt to whatever's going on. There's no buffer involved.
Right.
And so you need both of these very long-term and very short-term ways of prioritizing, focus as a noun, focus as a verb, to come together in order to be able to answer again and again what's important now. So that's actually a lot of what we're talking about is not in the book. This has been post the book, and it's the things I'm learning and understanding as I try continually to be an essentialist myself.
Wow. Okay. I didn't expect that. So yeah. I just at a personal note, we just celebrated 2 weeks ago my parents' 40th wedding anniversary.
Wow! And congratulations.
Yeah, I'm blessed to have really fantastic parents, and you know, it was a great celebration. Lots of friends there, fantastic. And I did a speech, of course, about them, and a presentation, some photos, the whole history of their marriage. Wow. And one of the things I said, what you just, you know, something in long lines, what you just said, I think, guys, and I said to my parents, I think, guys, 40 years ago, from my personal point of view, you did the best decision ever. Because without this decision, I wouldn't be here. So
Exactly. And that's exactly what we want. We want to take on an intergenerational frame so that we can see the long-term impact of this moment. And it's about connecting the dots all the way from this very long moment to this very instant moment. Because what I perceive is that this moment of now, this instant, is under attack constantly.
Oh, yeah.
So we experience it in the form of just how difficult it is to be present any moment. how difficult it is to be fully present, even in this conversation, all the things that might be on our minds and pulling on us and other things and so on. So being present is how we experience the problem. But the problem, I think, has more ramifications than just that we feel frantic in the now. And I think it's that this instantaneous way of living, this maybe instantism, robs us of the narrative form of our lives. So it robs us of a sense of where we've been, of our journey. It robs us of a sense of future planning and thinking and perspective. And then in addition, it also robs us, and we're more aware of this part, of the now. So the paradox, I think, of this new, I don't even know if I want to call it enemy, but let's call it that for now. This new enemy is that it affects all three parts of the narrative. And when we have lost the narrative, I mean, that's like losing the plot in a story, like we are lost.
Yes.
And as I've said before, there's really only two kinds of the people in that kind of world. There are people who are lost, and then there are people who know they are lost. And to know you are lost is really the beginning of the way out. Mm-hmm. Because you start to go, look, I have no idea. Well, where am I? And what am I doing here? And what's next? And why? And all of those crucial, those what I would call the big essential questions, can be answered as soon as you admit you're lost. It's like the matrix idea. As soon as you see that you're in a matrix, then I've got a decision to make. I can start to look at what's really going on. And until we can see that, we can't do anything about it. So it's really about restoring the narrative of our lives that I'm starting to feel increasingly strongly about.
Yeah, and something that you also said in the book, I think in the book or in one of the conversations that I heard you talking, sure. was this moment when we went to the USA and somebody said, should you decide to stay in the USA? And that moment for you was that actually you have a decision. So I want to get back to that what you just said, we influence our narrative. We can decide. Like we very, very, I think too often we feel we are not in the steering wheel. We're not deciding, and we can decide. So we can decide the narrative, and something that people really don't understand. I mean, don't know, are afraid to admit, or think they don't have this decision.
Yes, I mean this is right, because when we have these stormtrooper moments, right, when we have all of these extra things that we just believe we should do, they get put into our backpack in a kind of almost thoughtless way. They're very easily accepted and adopted. And then we live with them, with these burdens of expectation that we didn't deliberately choose. They just live there, and we don't even notice them. We're like fish who discover water last. Mm-hmm. We just don't see it. It's everywhere, but we don't see it. And that was true for me at law school, was that I'm at law school and I just think that's what I have to do, because after all, I'd worked to get there. And after all, it's a great opportunity. And after all, it keeps your options open, which is what I'd always been told, keep your options open. And it did those things. So it's easy to see, and even in hindsight, why I would have felt like, yes, I'm here, so I just have to carry on and be successful. That's what one does. And it took being geographically away from England and having this conversation, and they did. It was only a throwaway comment, but they just said, "Oh, if you do decide to stay in America, you should come and help me," and so on. If you did something different, if you didn't hold the non-essentialist assumptions that you hold right now, if you could do something different, what would you do? And that was the beginning of it for me. I remember spending the next 20 minutes brainstorming. Yeah. What would you do if you could do anything, if you didn't have to do what you're doing now? And when I was finished, I was struck by not what was on the list, but what wasn't on the list. It wasn't just all the things I was wanting to do. It was that law school didn't even make the list.
Yeah.
If I could do anything, law school just not one of the things at all.
Mm.
And so I realized, well, if I was starting today, if I was right now standing there looking at that piece of paper, if I wasn't at law school at that point, there's no way I'd be going.
Yeah.
So that became a helpful challenge and insight to question, should I even be doing this? And it was really the beginning of the end, because as soon as there was permission not to, it was there was no going back. But I did sort of along the way realize, well, I better call my parents. And so I called the 15-digit number back to England, ring, and finally my mother answers, which is fortunate in hindsight. And finally she says, well, I think you better talk to Dad. So he comes on the phone and he listens for a while. And then because all Englishmen quote Shakespeare, tea and crumpets for breakfast in the morning.
Right.
He pulls out this line from Hamlet, from Polonius to his son Laertes. He says, son, very Churchillian of him, son, he said, you know what we've always told you. Which, by the way, what he'd always told me is, go to law school. But somehow he didn't think about it in that term, in that moment. He said, what we've always told you is, to thine own self be true. And so that was further permission. It's okay. Follow what's inside of you. Listen to that voice. Pursue that voice, and it won't lead you astray. And that has been true for my life. The biggest errors I've made have been when I, didn't listen, violated that voice, or just kind of let it be drowned out by other things. And the great thrust of my life has been, I am pleased to report to this point anyway, in this almost 20 years now, has been really continually going back to that voice. I mean, that's really what I mean when I say pursue what's essential. It's not what somebody else thinks is essential, and it's not what society says is essential, and it's not what we selfishly think is essential either. And that's a distinction I wish to make, because I didn't write a book called Selfishism.
Yeah, exactly.
Or noism. It's not about just doing more of what I want for my life. I didn't write that book. Essentialism is best understood by this idea of, what does your conscience counsel? It's getting enough space so that you can hear that voice saying, this is the right path. This is the way. Walk in this path. And then when we have that, we have the yes now with which to navigate all of the other requests that come our way. So we then have a reason not to do whatever the next opportunity is. And without that yes, then we don't have a reason not to. And we need that in life, otherwise we will become a function of other people's whims and requests, and it's good to be responsive to people. But I think you're a servant to any request and any expectation. It's like email makes a poor master, a good servant, and we have to keep it in that way.
And that's a perfect finish to this. Like in our case, by closing the Practice magazine, it's not like I don't want to contribute more to help people get things done. I want to do it differently. I want to, as you said in the book and in your speeches, I want to contribute more. I want to contribute better. But I just found out that it's not, that this is not the way, that there is more. There's something more. There's something better. I can do it better. So it's not noism. It's not, I want to just contribute more and give myself space to do it.
This is, you remember from the book that Gandhi is a great essentialist, and one that inspired no end. And his life is a continual pursuit of what he found was essential. And if he hadn't done that, he would have made immeasurably different choices. So he ultimately was successful in bringing independence to 300 million Indians at the time, the largest democracy in the world, and now, of course, many more. He became the father of the nation. And when he died, the US Secretary of State, General George C. Marshall, said, here's a man who's shown that simplicity can be more powerful than empires, or words to that effect. Einstein said to him, generations to come will scarce believe that such a one as this ever in flesh and blood walked upon this earth. All right, so Gandhi's inspirational figure, a leader worth learning from, and an essentialist, clearly, in almost every conceivable way. The reason I share all of that is because I was in South Africa, where he lived for 23 years, and I went to the Phoenix settlement, which is where exactly where he lived, where his house was. And when I was taking a tour of the remodeled house, came across, was given a poem, which I was told was the only poem Gandhi ever wrote. And in that poem had these 4 words, which is reducing oneself to zero. This is the succinctest and a deeper summary of what it means to be an essentialist, is to reduce the self and to eliminate whatever comes along, however good, in pursuit of something better, to become more and more of who we really are and less of who we really aren't. And so this desire to contribute at a higher level will always require an elimination of some previous version of ourselves. The 1.0 version must disappear. The 2.0 version eventually must disappear, however good it's been, however meaningful it's been, in order for a 3.0 version to come forward. And that's what you're describing, and that's what you're doing. It takes courage. It always takes courage to do these things. But if, as someone said to me recently, as soon as we aren't using any courage in our life, it's like the universe wants its parts back. And I think that's true, that it doesn't feel good at all to have courage, actually. It feels terrifying.
Oh, it feels really bad.
But so we want to get through courage as soon as possible and on to the next thing. But we need to keep doing it, leaning into those challenges in order to keep living and keep growing. And that's what you're doing. That's what you're describing. And I applaud you for your pursuit, and I'm sure it will lead to the next level and next set of great things for you.
Greg, thank you so much. It's been a blast, and it's been a privilege having you here. And thanks so much for helping me, together close Practice Magazine with a blast, with something special for our readers and for myself. Thanks so much. It's been great.
Thank you. The pleasure's mine.